Good morning and hello, kids and cubs. It is Wednesday, June 17th, 2026. And today on The Beaver Show, we're going to be talking about bills, bills, bills. We have the lawful access bill. We have bill on bail and sentencing. We have bills on First Nations drinking water. And we even have a private member's bill from a conservative MP who's actually trying to be helpful on the therapeutic use of magic mushrooms. So please grab your favorite bevy and come join us at the Dan Fam because here we go.
Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Oops, I forgot to bring myself back on camera. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 6 and episode number 932 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada. Always 100% Canadian. And of course, always be verific. Today, recording day is Wednesday, June 17th, 2026. And it is, as you can tell by my face, a gorgeous day here at the Beaver Lodge. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A. And not with me as usual is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. Although we will be seeing him this weekend because we are going to have our mental health walk on the 20th. If you are in Ottawa, come meet us at the Museum of, oh my God, Museum of Nature, I believe it is. I think I forgot the name of the museum. Around noon, we're going to take that little 5 kilometer walk, have some chat, and then stop at the Lieutenant's Pump for our monthly pub cast, which we haven't been doing monthly so much this year, but to hope to get back on a regular schedule now that we're starting to get a few other things sorted out here. And yeah, so if you want your dose of grizzly, please do tune into that. And if you are not a walk, do come walk with us, or at least come to the pump afterwards and give us a little bit of a live audience. And of course, if you want to chat with us on the show, we always have 4 microphones set up so that you can join the fun and have a little conversation with us. And of course, if you are away, you can always come in and join us online because we'll have the link and we can send it to you and we can just have a chat about anything except politics and religion. So please join us on Saturday for that. I'm always excited about that. Pubcasts are my favorite day of the month. So yay! As well, Bill, number one, because I get some grizzly time, especially since I'm getting a whole lot less of it since he's found a job. I was going to say since he got a haircut and found a real job, but I'm feeling a little cheeky today, kits and cubs. I'm feeling a little cheeky. Big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corbin Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Kits and cubs, how is your mental health doing today? I'm doing very well. I had another relatively good night's sleep. Decided to take advantage of it. That's why I'm a little later this morning, earlier than yesterday, but still later than the regular time. However, I do desperately need the sleep after 8 nights of insomnia. Yeah, things were getting a little sketch at this end. So I'm glad to be a little more rested. As you can see, the Louis Vuittons under the eyes are getting slightly smaller as I'm getting more hours, which is a good thing. Hey, right? Uh, I, I'm 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 still a little bit vain. Let's just put it that way. And of course, it's Pride Month, right? So there's extra pressure to look fabulous. The damn fan demands fashion and glamour. What can I say? All right. But yes, got a good night's sleep in good spirits. And there's a lot to deal with in the show today. In fact, I had trouble because there's deciding what to talk about today just because there's all this important, serious news about bills, which we're going to talk about. But then there's a whole bunch of other things that have been going on. Like, for example, I'm seeing here Kid Uncover, and I saw that this morning that Christy Nome has been hired in a strategic advisory role for a BC mining company. Why? I mean, what? Um, I'm sure she doesn't have tons of mining experience, and it's not like she's particularly well liked up here. But apparently, a company called Nova Red Mining, whose head office is located in Vancouver, said that Nome has joined the company in a quote strategic advisory role to support Nova Red's mission of acquiring and advancing critical mineral exploration opportunities through its artificial intelligence enhanced technology platform. Considering Nome was reassigned from her role as Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security after serving for only 13 months, and she was a disaster in the job. Um, I don't know. Donald Trump seems to be happy about it. Said Nome, quote, who has served us well and has had numerous and spectacular results. Spectacular? Yeah. Spectacular is one of those words like transformative. The results were indeed spectacular. Spectacularly bad. Because especially on the border, we'll be moving to the new role of special envoy for the Shield of the Americas. Um, I have no idea what the Shield of the Americas is, really, at all. Not sure how you boycott a mining company, but I'm not sure how this company thought that this was a good move. I mean, just PR wise, this is a disaster. Um, then there's other little bit of news. Uh, for example, if you are concerned about the separatist option in Alberta gaining some traction, you might not have to worry about that so much because it seems that they're doing a bang up job being all unicorns and lollipops and rainbows over there. Um, it would appear that because of them, people in Sundre, I'm going to guess, is it Sundre? The town's called Sundre? Or is it a group called Sundre? No, there's a town called Sundre. Um, had to cancel its annual parade for the Sun Pro Rodeo because of the behavior of separatists. According to Joel Dryden of CBC News, a central Alberta town won't host its annual parade this year after organizers said a decision to disallow a pro Alberta float led to a barrage of, quote, online criticism, personal attacks, harassment, and abusive messages. The Sundre Pro Rodeo is set to kick off on June 18th An annual parade was scheduled for June 20th with the theme celebrating our Sundre pioneers. But in a statement posted on its website, the Sundre Pro Radio Race Association announced the parade was cancelled, writing that, quote, a parade entry decision has generated, quote, strong opinions. Darby Couch, Darby Crouch, a media spokesperson with the rodeo, said the decision involved a pro-Alberta float that was decorated with multiple Alberta flags. We did regretfully deny them at first because there was some extra caution due to what happened in 2022. What happened in 2022? Ooh. Ooh, there's history. Ooh. That year, a float appeared in the rodeo that involved depictions of former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and former federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. Oh boy, I can just imagine what comes next. Who is Sikh? A man wearing a fake beard and turban was seen riding in a manure spreader behind a tractor with the words "The Liberal" pasted on its side. It was called Racist by Jason Nixon, UCP MLA for Rimby Rock Mountain House Sundry, as well as the Dashmesh Culture Center in Calgary, a Sikh community hub. Wow, if you got Jason Nixon calling things racist, that must be pretty bad. Quote, we're very cautious about anything that has a political narrative, Crouch said about this year's float. We had regretfully not asked for clarification and a couple of days later reached out and did say that they were allowed to be in the parade. So they were denied first, then they were asked, please describe your float, I would assume. And then they did. And they said, okay, well, if that's what it's going to be, sure. Right? If it's just a float with a whole bunch of Alberta flags and whatnot, well, who would be against that in Alberta? Right? Sundre resident Tom Oldfield was one of the people behind the float. He expressed frustration with the organizers' handling of the situation, adding he didn't feel as though he and his wife had received proper assurance that the float would be allowed back or an apology about how things were handled. Ah, yes, they always want an apology. While he said he is, quote, a very big supporter of separation, Oldfield said that all the float was intended to do was support the Alberta flag. Mhm. Like the Alberta flag needs support in Alberta. Anyway, quote, there was nothing on there that said separation at all. All it was Alberta flags and some songs and passing out Alberta flags. Uh huh. What songs? The decision to disallow and then readmit the float into the parade made the rounds on social media. Crouch said many online, quote, didn't believe that organizers had allowed the float back in, and a narrative emerged that organizers were, quote, anti Alberta and were trying to take away freedom of speech. So they were denied at first, and then they said, you know what? Maybe we were too rash. Let's go ask them about it. Oh, is that all it is? Yeah. Okay. Well, that's not so bad. Please come and join. Well, I don't really believe that they like this instant reaction from that particular demographic that no matter what anybody says, they just don't believe it and that there's got to be some type of plot or underhanded thing, right? Again, that's because when you meet someone like that that believes that's always catch, there's always a catch, there's always something underhanded going on. That's because with them, there's always a catch and something underhanded going on, and they just can't imagine a reality in which anybody else doesn't believe they believe and behave the exact same way as they do. That's the only reason. Because there was no reason for anybody to suspect that they didn't really mean it, or maybe they didn't really let us in after they said no first and then said, hey, maybe we were too rash, went to find out, and then said, you know what, given this new information, we are making a new decision, which is what normal people do when they get new information that contradicts what it is that they had believed. So the people organizing the parade thought one thing, sought to get more information, saw that the information that they got was different than what they believed, and changed their minds. The people who wanted to submit the float got the no, then got approached this to find out so that they could tell them what their float was about, heard from the parade organizers, oh, that's not so bad, you can come, and with that new information, did not change their minds. See the dynamic? Hmm. Angry correspondence arrived in the rodeo's general email, as well as to the personal emails of its board of directors, she said. Volunteers reading the comments online began to feel unsafe, Crouch added, thus confirming the organizing group's first impression that maybe these are people that shouldn't be allowed into the parade. Quote, there was one that stood out saying, like, we're going to hunt the organizers down, publicly humiliate them in front of thousands, she said. The parade and the rodeo rely entirely on volunteers, and that environment just became increasingly difficult to sustain. RCMP Corporal Gina Slaney said no complaints or threats tied to harassment have been officially made to the RCMP, and there are no active investigations. Lawrence Maggi, who describes himself as an independent content creator who drew a following during the protests known as the Freedom Convoy, said he began receiving messages about the rodeo's denial late last week. Quote, the Sundry Rodeo and Race Association board just rejected a simple float entry decorated with nothing but Alberta flags, no slogans, no banners, just our provincial flag. Their reason, too political, Maggi wrote on Facebook June 11th. Let that sink in. Flying the Alberta flag in Alberta is now too political. Maggie, who broadcasts as Berta Proud Dad online, has more than 200,000 followers on his Instagram account. He was one of many who posted about the move as it spread on social media. Quote, all I asked was that the people go to the parade and wave their Alberta flags because the Alberta flag belongs to each and every Albertan, Maggie told CBC News. Organizers and volunteers receiving threats is not acceptable behavior, Maggie said. I didn't tell anybody to go threaten anybody, but this is the internet. This is the new era. This is what people feel to do. I get threats on a daily basis because of my political opinion and ideology, he said. Yes, so he's aware of all of that, but he still decided to froth by claiming that the reason we were denied is because all we wanted to do was fly Alberta flags, and they said that Alberta flags were too political, not remembering what happened in 2022, clearly. Right? After he heard about the threats, Maggie said he denounced it right away online and said people need to start smartening up. Sundre is a small town with a population of a little more than 2,500. Lana Saunders, secretary for the Sundre District Nutrition, let's try that again. Landa Saunders, secretary for the Sundre and District Nutrition, yes, for Learning Society, said that means volunteers from different groups overlap. News of harassment quickly spread. You talk amongst yourselves, right? She said. As a volunteer myself, I understand how much of a challenge it is to just put on events in general. So, yes, it is very unfortunate. It is very hard to get volunteers if they are mistreated. Saunders Society, an organization that provides a breakfast and snack program to students, uses the parade as a fundraising opportunity. Quote, I really wish the political aspect can be left out of it. Politics in general have divided society so much over the years now. The rodeo brings the community together. It's something that's been around forever. The association said all of the rodeo events will go ahead as scheduled. The event runs June 18th to 21st. So, yeah, Federalists, you probably don't have to say all that much in Alberta. Just leave all the terrain to the separatists because they sure are doing a big, bang up job making friends and influencing people. Threats. Threats. Yeah, that's the way to go, people. That's the way to go. Ugh. And then there's another piece of news. Remember, yesterday I showed you a clip of Dan Williams, the UCP MLA, who was talking about our common history, right? And taking down statues of John A. Macdonald. How terrible that is. Remember, federal conservatives, we need to build more statues, right? We need to share our common history without defining what our is. Because I think their version of R is not the same thing as my definition of R. That's R-O-U-R. Mm-hmm. The same people that got completely apoplectic when they heard that Terry Fox was being removed from the passport. Erasure of Canadian history. Um, However, all of that passion for Canada's symbols and history and heritage seems to stop. Have you ever noticed with conservatives when it came to Hockey Night in Canada? Remember when we had to buy the rights to the theme song? The person who wrote the theme song was asking for a little more money. That was under Stephen Harper, and Stephen Harper decided that no. So then the Hockey Night in Canada theme song was changed. And then about 15 years ago or so, 2013, I think it is, Rogers then came in And then Hockey Night in Canada wasn't exclusively on the CBC. Well, uh, they had CBC had some Saturday night games, but everything else was sort of organized um, by Rogers on Sportsnet. Well, it seems that we are now at the total end of an era because there will now no longer be any more Hockey Night in Canada on CBC. That 15-year contract has ended. According to CBC Sports, CBC will no longer broadcast NHL hockey games after it and national rights holders Rogers Sportsnet were unable to come to agreement on a new sub-licensing deal that would have allowed the public broadcaster to air games on its Saturday program Hockey Night in Canada. The CBC, which began televising NHL games in 1952, had operated under that agreement since Rogers Sportsnet acquired the league's Canadian rights in 2013 for $5.2 billion. Rogers Sportsnet renews those rights. Sorry, let's try that again. Rogers Sportsnet renewed those rights with a 12-year, $11.2 billion deal to begin in October. The CBC previously aired national games on Saturdays along with all four playoff rounds each year. The CBC and Rogers Sportsnet announced the change in a joint statement Tuesday. Quote, after a successful 12-year partnership, Sportsnet and CBC today announced the public broadcaster will no longer carry NHL broadcasts after the current season as it moves forward with a new sports programming strategy following the unprecedented success of the Milano Cortina Olympic Games, the statement said. Yes. Now, I'm going to guess that this was it was a joint statement. But yes, after a successful 12-year partnership, we have decided not to be partners anymore. Yeah, what? Huh? Quote, watching hockey on Saturday night is a time honored tradition for Canadians, and Sportsnet is privileged to continue delivering that tradition. This has been a terrific partnership, and both parties look forward to continued opportunities to collaborate in the future. What are the odds that in the future, Canadians now who are receiving their NHL hockey for free via the CBC are going to start being asked if they want to pay for certain packages to receive certain games? While the CBC still holds the Hockey Night in Canada trademark and could incorporate the brand into future coverage, it's the first time the program won't be available to Canadian viewers via the public broadcaster. Quote, I can't imagine it, said Michael McKinley, author of Hockey Night in Canada 60 Seasons. I mean, I can't imagine it, but I don't want to imagine it. Neither do I. It's definitely a bit of an end of an era, CBC Sports Executive Director Chris Wilson said in a phone interview, but we're choosing to look at it more as an opportunity as opposed to a loss. It's not like you got any choice, but that is the right attitude, because when you don't have a choice, you do have a choice about what your attitude is going to be going forward. But we fully understand that it's going to take an opportunity away from some Canadians to see it on CBC, but that's unfortunate where we landed. We were so excited for the next chapter. I wonder what that's going to do to the Hockey Night in Canada broadcasts that were being done in other languages, like in Indigenous languages and in Punjabi and whatnot, to make it more accessible. I wonder if uh, Rogers and Sportsnet are going to keep that up. Hockey Night in Canada was a Saturday night mainstay for generations of hockey fans. The CBC brand was so dynamic and so finely created and presented that it defined a way of telling the sports story, McKinley said in a recent interview. Broadcasters like Dick Irvin, Bob Cole, Ron McLean, Don Cherry, Dave Hodge, Foster Hewitt, to name a few, helped provide the soundtrack that Canadians would cherish. Traditional baby blue blazers, complete with a puck and stick HNIC logo on the jacket pocket, were as familiar as the announcers' voices. The CBC's interest in sports has basically been in amateur sports for quite a while, and other professional sports are on sports channels like Sportsnet and TSN, Hodge said in a phone interview. They all look the same. Nobody wears any baby blue jackets with Hockey Night in Canada crest to identify it as a Saturday night game. I think that this was coming. It was inevitable. Things began to change when Rogers first secured a 12-year, $5.2 billion rights deal with the league in 2013, with many games available on the Sportsnet broadcast platform. The telecom giant and the CBC agreed on sub-licensing deal for English language broadcasts of Hockey Night in Canada. A separate French language deal was made with TVA. I think that at I think that as the national broadcaster, as the entity that is responsible for telling Canadian stories to Canada, hockey is an essential Canadian story, McKinley said. I think it was part of the CBC's mandate to do it. They got it right for a long time. Under the setup, Sportsnet produced the games, retained editorial control, and managed the advertising. The CBC's inclusion helped broaden the reach across the country. It also kept the tradition intact and allowed the broadcaster to promote some of its own programming. Quote, "It was the original appointment television for Canada every Saturday night," said James Nadler, chair of the Radio and Television Arts Media Program at Toronto Metropolitan University. The first sub-licensing deal, a 4-year agreement that started with the 2014-15 season, was followed by a 1-year extension. With a 7-year sub-licensing deal was finalized ahead of the 2019-20 campaign, Rogers said it ensured that Hockey Night in Canada broadcasts continued to reach the maximum number of Canadians every Saturday night on CBC, Sportsnet, and City. Rogers also said that HNIC consistently ranked among the top 5 programs, reaching on average 7.5 million Canadians each week. Quote, "Saturday night NHL hockey is woven into the fabric of Canada, and our partners at Sportsnet will continue this great tradition, as they have for the last 12 years," NHL Chief Communications Officer John Weinstein said in an email. In place of Hockey Night in Canada, CBC will launch a new Saturday night primetime show on CBC and streaming on CBC Gem, featuring Canadian athletes competing at home and at the biggest events around the world. Quote, "As the proud home of Team Canada, we're already investing in the LA Games in 2028 and setting a course for the French Alps in 2030, said Doug Smith, Executive Vice President, CBC. Quote, "At the same time, our commitment doesn't pause following the closing ceremony. We will be there between the games in every community, every arena, every early morning practice, and every late night training session." In addition, Radio-Canada, the broadcaster's French language service, will launch Rendezvous Podium, a weekly show on Ici Télé and Ici Tout TV on Sunday afternoons. Now, the new direction that the CBC is going into is something that I do very much support because as you know, we are big fans of our athletes, particularly the ones who go out to international competition, represent us at big multi-sports events, and they don't get enough profile between Olympics, and to have a Saturday night show that hopefully will become a tradition for those who like sports other than the big four, right? Hockey, football, baseball, basketball, and let's say we can even add soccer now, the big five. Will have an opportunity to enjoy those athletes, and they will get more profile, and maybe that will mean more sponsorships for them and all of that good stuff. I'm all for that, right? I have no problem with that. That's a good thing. We should have been doing that a long time ago. This not should not have needed to happen in order to get there. However, no hockey night in Canada on CBC at all, ever, in a country like Canada, where hockey is like a religion. It's one of the things, capital THE, that bind us all together. That's no longer on CBC. And you're not going to hear a peep from conservatives. Why? Because the conservatives want to destroy the CBC. And Hockey Night in Canada, well, when CBC was controlling it, that was a big ratings getter. It was a decent revenue generator. And since the conservatives only want there to be one voice, want the media to speak with only one voice, their own, which is why they campaign so hard on defunding the CBC. Now, for that part of our OUR common shared history, they don't stand up for that, though. We change our passports and remove a picture of Terry Fox or remove a drawing having to do with Vimy Ridge, and they go apoplectic. They lose their minds. We take down a statue of Sir John A. for reasons that are rather obvious, considering it is National Indigenous History Month, and they lose their minds. But when it comes to standing up for Hockey Night in Canada, no, they have nothing to say there. No, we can't afford the rights to the theme song. That little bit of our history gets erased. Oh, no. Let the private corporations take the broadcasting rights over from the CBC. We lose that little bit of our heritage. Now it's going to be, now let it just completely disappear from the CBC completely. And we're going to lose a little bit of that, our heritage. And then when a lot of the games are going to go on to streaming, not all of us are going to have access to it. Let that little piece of our history and heritage also get erased. Because they don't believe in preserving our history and heritage. Right? They care more about the fact that the CBC is getting kneecapped. And if a part of our common history and heritage needs to be sacrificed for that, well, then that's okay. And that's how you know they don't believe in what it is they say that they believe. They engage in selective patriotism. Because if there's anything historical and patriotic that also helps the CBC, then that's not worth saving or fighting for or speaking out. Everything with them is constantly self serving. So, yeah, just thought I would make a little notice. That I noticed that the people that scream the most about maintaining the traditions of Canada. There are two traditions of Canada they don't seem to care much about: Hockey Night in Canada and the CBC. And it's like that David Frum saying, I think it was, if conservatives have to choose between conservatism and democracy, they will first sacrifice democracy in order to preserve whatever perverted definition of conservatism they are pushing. If the Conservatives have to decide between Hockey Night in Canada and the CBC, they will sacrifice Hockey Night in Canada so that they can kill CBC. This is a party that's not with us. Whenever they wrap themselves up in the flag, it is always performative. And you can't have any better proof than this. Ah, man. Yep. They want to take away anything publicly owned, says Nona Carol. Indeed. Grey Speech Life. The CBC did not renew its broadcast partnership because it failed to reach a new sub-licensing agreement with national rights holder Rogers Sportsnet after their previous 12-year contract expired at the conclusion of the 2026 Stanley Cup playoffs. Indeed. Kit Dolan. That's a new name for us. Hi, welcome to the Beaver Lodge. We won't get a word from Pierre about this. Oh, no. No, they're probably popping champagne. Kit Linda. Half the PWHL playoffs were only on Amazon, and that pissed me off too. Yeah. Kit Linda. We have TSN and Sportsnet as part of our internet TV subscription. I'm waiting to see how our subscription goes up. Kit Stephen Reo. Hi. Another new name for us. Welcome to the Beaver Lodge. Canadian sports fans are tearing into streaming service Sportsnet Plus after they learned it would be hiking prices by double digits before next hockey season. See? Oh my God. Wow. Kid Bucky had the same comment. Kit Linda M about the previous story about in Sundre. And whose fault is it that the flag has been made political? The people who decided to use it as a weapon. Yeah. Yes. And then Kit Kat here. Another, see, that's what I mean. There was a whole bunch of these little stories here. Now Ford is using the fake news bit about his failing numbers. Yes, Douglas Trump. Douglas Trump received news about from Angus Reid, because Angus Reid every month presents numbers on premiers' approval for all premiers except for Prince Edward Island for some reason. The population base is too small. Yeah, but they're still a premier, and you're doing the thing of premiers. Like, let's include them. They also don't include the northern premiers as well. But it says here that this is from Angus Reid. This came out June 13th. Political discontent may be growing across the country, but this quarter's premier approval ratings show a clear concentration of trouble among three of the country's most prominent leaders in Alberta, British Columbia, and Ontario. Danielle Smith, David Eby, and Doug Ford all fall to personal lows, each facing a different mix of governing fatigue, economic pressure, and controversy at home. Smith and Eby, premiers of neighboring provinces increasingly at odds over pipelines, federalism, and the future of national unity, both lose ground this quarter. Smith approval falls. Uh, oh, okay, that's a typo on their part. They got false drops. This, so let's just pick drops. Smith's approval drops to an all-time low at 39% after weeks of controversy over her government's plan to hold an October referendum related to Alberta's place in Canada. West of the Rockies, Eby drops to 31% as his government faces ongoing pressure over DRIPA, property rights concerns, healthcare, and affordability after nearly 9 years of NDP government in BC. In Ontario, Ford falls to 21%, the lowest approval level of his 8-year premiership after a season marked by tariff concerns, deficit projections, and backlash over the now reversed purchase of a government jet. And I'm going. I'm going to show you the graph here. Put it up, and this is. See WAP Canoe in first place at 62%. WAP 1 from last month. Tony Wakeham, Newfoundland and Labrador, up 8 from last month because it looks like he might be getting to a deal or fighting for a better deal on electricity. Scott Moe, always somewhat high. I guess people in Saskatchewan really like him. And I have to say that recently he has been appearing a little bit more on Team Canada, more so than Danielle Smith has, but down just one, but still at 50% approval after all this time. Susan Holt had a big drop of 13% support, down to 41% in New Brunswick. I don't know what led to that. Christine Fréchette, who is the new leader of Quebec, coming in at 39%, making a decent first impression, particularly given that she only has a full 6 months to make an impression before Quebec goes into an election. And if I'm looking at the numbers at 338 Canada, she's doing really well. Here, I will bring you this visual here that you can see right here. Was March 31st, around the time I'm guessing that she came to power. And she has boosted the fortunes of the CAQ from 10% to 21% in her short time there, which is, of course, affecting the Parti Québécois and the Liberals, pulling from both of them here. The Quebec Conservative Party is taking a little dip as the CAQ, which is also conservative-minded, is gaining some popularity. And in terms of seat projections, again, 21%, not showing much, but here, we were seeing the CAQ was going to have 0 seats around the time she came in, and now that's showing at 9 seats, right? And the Parti Québécois no longer in a majority territory, according to this, down to 61. It would appear that in Quebec, Paul Saint-Pierre, as I like to call him, Paul Saint-Pierre Poilièvre Plamondon, because he shares the same anti-charisma that Pierre Poilièvre, and that same off-putting nature that Pierre Poilièvre has. According to some public opinion surveys, just trying to bring this up here. Oh, and I'm noticing that I'm a little congested. I think you can hear me, hear it in my voice. Let's see here. Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon. This was from Palace Data. Asked, do you have a favorable or unfavorable impression of the leader of the Parti Québécois, Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon? And it says here that, I'm going to bring this up for you. There you go. Whoops. Where did it go? There it is. In September, was 47% favorable, 30% unfavorable. This is September 2024. If we get to November 2025, 39% favorable, 42% unfavorable. February 2026, 35% favorable, 46% unfavorable. And now that we're in June 2026, 31% favorable, 54% unfavorable. The more people get to know him, the more people don't like him. So, just as is the case for Canada, Operation Keep Paul Saint-Pierre talking appears to be working. So, when you got Pierre Poilièvre going around and saying, we never had any separation talk during the time where Harper was prime minister over the last 10 years, and now look what Mark Carney is doing. Rah, 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 rah. Well, right now it's looking like the separatists in Quebec might be talking themselves out of a majority government, and it looks like the separatists in Alberta are making it such that nobody really has to say much to stand for Canada because they're so warm and cuddly. They're not at all violent. Just let them keep talking. They're doing a wonderful job with their sales pitch. Don't interrupt them. Oh, my word. I tell you. Jeez. Unbelievable. Then, this is from June 4th. It's a little old, but from Jessica Owen, it appears that there is some more conservative MPs, no, not MPs, conservative, ideologically conservative provincial politicians, this one an MPP, um, from Ontario. Simcoe Gray, MPP, admits telling a fellow MPP, quote, to shut your mouth during a debate at Queen's Park was inappropriate and inexcusable. MPP Brian Saunderson was speaking during a debate over Bill 119 on June 1st when he paused mid-sentence to look across the room and said, "You had your turn, shut your mouth." MPP Lisa Gretzky, representing Windsor West, and the NDP party said Saunderson directed the comment and pointed a finger at her when he said it. She has called on him to apologize. Quote, "My words were unparliamentarian, inappropriate, and inexcusable, regardless of who they were directed to," said Saunderson in an interview. "I lost my temper and frustration in the heat of the moment, so I retracted my comments. You never should have made them in the first place. You should have had more mastery over yourself." The transcript from the debate shows Saunderson did say, quote, "I'll retract," after being asked by the Deputy Speaker, Effie Triantafilopoulos, twice to retract the comment. Bill 119, the proposed Protecting Ontario Streets and Communities Act, includes a series of measures intended to combat intimate partner violence, child safety, and human trafficking. Gee, a great bill to tell for a white conservative man to tell a female colleague to shut her mouth about. Bill 119, the proposed Protecting Ontario Streets and Communities Act, includes a series of measures intended to combat intimate partner violence, child safety, and human trafficking, while streamlining the judicial appointment process, giving police additional tools to combat auto theft, and strengthening the current bail system. On a June 1 20-minute debate occurred at Queen's Park on the proposed legislation led by Niagara West MPP Sam Oosterhoff. Gretzky posted a clip of the video of the session on her social media. Well, since she did that, why not? Let's show it. Let's see the behavior that we pay people. We pay for this, kids and cubs. These men, conservative men, not being able to not be emotional.
Women in this province want a normal life to be able to mean that we can go to work and we can go out in our community and take our children out and not have to worry.
You had your term. Shut your mouth. Now,
I spent some time asking a question of the member for Niagara West who was speaking, talking about making it safer for women in their workplaces and on the streets and out in community. And when my colleague from Simcoe Gray got up to speak and I said something, his reaction was to very aggressively, very emotionally and unhinged, yell across the aisle at me, "Shut your mouth," while pointing at me. And so I'm proposing an invitation to my colleague from Simcoe Gray to reflect on his behavior and understand how that is part of the problem.
She handled that exceptionally well, because I might have had a few choice words of my own. And they say women are too emotional for politics. Hmm? Who's? Oh my God. So, yeah, Doug Ford was asked about his 21%. This is from Elena Sneezarenko, CBC News. Ontario Premier Ford is bickering with a well-known Canadian polling firm after it released data that showed his approval rating had tumbled to its lowest ever at 21%. On June 11, Angus Reid Institute put out survey data looking at Premier approval ratings across the country. Ford was the worst out of the 8 provinces polled. PEI was not included due to its small population size. Asked about the poll Tuesday, Ford called the results fake, claiming the firm polls the NDP and Liberal caucus. I got a hold of their methodology once, folks. They went into a hardcore NDP neighborhood downtown. They didn't do it across. It's little games, and then you guys run with it, he said at an unrelated news conference in Thunder Bay. The premier went on to say he'd form a massive majority if an election was held today. Hours later, Angus Reid clapped back with a response posted to its website, saying it stands by its research and methodology and that it has measured premier approval ratings for over a decade. Quote, while it's not surprising for a premier with a comparatively low approval rating to express unhappiness with the data, we note that Premier Ford has at time been amongst the most approved of provincial leaders in the country based on data from this same quarterly survey, the firm said. He didn't express a problem with Angus Reid polling then. Oh, it's just, oh, dang. The quarterly polling data shows Ford's approval rating dropped from 31% to 21% from March to June. Okay, this is quarterly polling, not monthly. Angus Reid attributed the drop to potential economic pressure and self-inflicted wounds, such as the government's purchase and subsequent sales of nearly $29 million private jet. The provincial margin of error for the Ontario data is plus minus 3%, meaning that results are within 3 percentage points in either direction of Ford's approval rating. Yes, so Ford gets this news that people don't seem to like him that much anymore. And what does he do? He goes all Donald Trump. The poll is fake news. The poll is fake news. Yeah, the poll was such fake news, Douglas, I should say. Listen, the reason that Doug Ford, the reason I go by Douglas is because Doug people like Doug Ford exist who really like to use Doug. And that's why I keep on saying I'm definitely a Douglas. But when Doug Ford gets a little antsy like this, I keep on thinking of a parental voice. Douglas Ford, get your butt down here right now. So yes, uh, Doug Ford appears to be a little sensitive these days because I'm sure any premier who truly and sincerely believes that a 21% approval rating is fake news is also the premier that would schedule a 100,276 day, slightly exaggerating, break between legislative sittings, right? Because you take 21 months, 21 months. If only we could take 21 months without him going to the camera. Because we take 21 weeks away from the legislature after sitting only for 30 days, after taking another, what was it, like 12 or 13 or God knows how many weeks away, because we believe that the people love us. Because we truly believe that our approval rating of 21% is fake news. If Doug Ford truly does believe, uh, that he would win that type of election in such a landslide today, if an election were held today, if he truly, sincerely does believe that, why isn't he all over the place like Premier Rob Canoe is right now? With his 62% approval rating. And again, let's take a little look at Doug Ford's claim here that he would win. He would get the most greatest number of seats, But the majority is 63 in Ontario, and he's down to 53. And if we're looking at since October 25, October 21st, 2025, this free fall from 90 seats down to 53 seats, while the leaderless, still Liberals, are climbing from 13 to 39. And if we're looking at this public opinion polling showing that the PCs are coming in at 38 and the Liberals are coming in at 35, when the PCs, again, in August 2025, were hitting 48%. Yes, that's because the news is fake. The decline has been happening for some time. It is sustained. It is a clearly established and confirmed trend. But it's fake news. He's such a big old sooky baby, isn't he? Just like Trump. Ugh, these people. I swear, these people. Ah. Meanwhile, if we go back to those premier performance numbers here and show them, we see here, we talked about Frechette, Smith down 7% over the last quarter. Houston down 5% last quarter. EB down 6% since the last quarter, and Doug 410. You will notice that 3 of the 4 least approved of premiers are conservatives. Could it be that Canadians are finally coming to the realization that we've come to on this show quite a long time ago, that it's our premiers who are the problem and not the federal government? Ford, Houston, Smith. Ford on his third majority. Houston picked himself up a supermajority just in the last provincial election. Smith was toying with the idea of maybe calling an early one. Now, maybe not so much. Still wondering why Susan Holt had a 13% drop from quarter to quarter. Maybe it has something to do specifically with how the softwood lumber industry is being hit in New Brunswick, because that's one of their biggest industries, and they're taking quite a tumble there. But yeah, that's what we're seeing here. Going back to the Angus Reid stuff here. The picture is not universally bleak for all premiers. Manitoba's Wab Kinew continues to hold high esteem among his electorate, with 3 in 5 approving of his performance and a 12-point advantage over any other provincial leader. Saskatchewan's Scott Moe remains steady at 50%, while new Quebec Premier Christine Frechette begins her tenure with approval from about 2 in 5 in the province. This represents a 13-point improvement over the final approval rating registered for former Premier François Legault. So, like I said, if she's got a couple of months to make a first impression so far, it seems that she's doing well enough, at least to save her party from total obliteration. So, yeah, and that's what we have going on, kits and cubs. In all the other things that are not bills, just tons of weirdness. Just weirdness going on. Here, Kit Saucy talks about the situation in New Brunswick. It could do with the toll and having to cut funding in areas to deal with New Brunswick's debt. Yes, as well. Yes, I had forgotten about the toll. Let me see if I can find a little bit information on that. New Brunswick was implementing a $4 toll for out-of-province vehicles traveling on the Trans-Canada Highway near the Nova Scotia border in Olac, New Brunswick. Scheduled to be fully operational and enforced by 2028, the toll will apply to all non-New Brunswick registered vehicles leaving Nova Scotia, it would seem. According to an article that appeared in March from Caitlin Belliveau, it says New Brunswick's plan to put a new toll near the Nova Scotia border is not going over well with students, truckers, and others who cross between provinces every day. Quote, "It feels like we're almost betrayed," says Alex Poplar, a student from River Hebert, Nova Scotia, said. If Premier Susan Holt follows through on her government's plan to increase revenue laid out in the provincial budget, there will be a new toll in place in Olac by 2028. Only non-New Brunswick vehicles will have to pay to pass the busy traffic and trade corridor. "We do feel like we pay into New Brunswick," Poplar, who travels to Mount Allison University 6 days a week, said. "This will primarily affect the people that are over in New Brunswick all the time, supporting the New Brunswick economy. The tolls price has not been set yet, but Finance Minister René Legacy estimates it could cost drivers around $4, like the Cobequid Pass toll in Nova Scotia. For people like Poplar, that could mean hundreds of dollars in added expenses each month. Legacy said it's fair to ask people who use New Brunswick's roads to chip in to maintain them. He said the toll will bring in $10.4 million a year, which will be put specifically towards road and bridge maintenance. A spokesperson for the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure said the exact location has not been determined yet. Cumberland North MLA Elizabeth Smith McCrossan said within an hour of the provincial government announcing the new toll, she got emails with concerns from constituents. And again, I just cannot help but notice the accidental play on words, but we're talking about a toll to cross into New Brunswick, and the MLA's name is Smith McCrossan. Just say. I notice these things. My mind's weird. Meanwhile, in New Brunswick, neighboring Tantramar MLA Megan Mitten said she is worried that there was no consultation on the idea, and she wonders whether the toll proposal should move ahead at all. "This is kind of blindsiding to this region," she said. "Why this border when there are other corridors entering the province?" About 2,500 commercial trucks pass through Olac each day, delivering billions of dollars worth of goods each year, according to Chris McKee with the Atlantic Provinces Truckers Association. New Brunswick has an agreement with the federal government which prohibits the province from placing highway tolls along the Quebec border. This is just counterintuitive to that, McKee said, and particularly since the government made a big effort to try to reduce the tolls to cross the Confederation Bridge from Prince Edward Island, and we're talking about provinces working together to sort of create one economy. This is kind of a head scratcher and as an idea and a little bit inconsistent with the overall vibe. MLA Smith McCrossan believes that the costs that Nova Scotia truckers take on at tolls will inevitably be passed down to consumers buying their goods in New Brunswick. Poplar, the student, thinks the toll would be put to better use between Fredericton and Moncton, where the province could toll people who utilize more of the province's roads. New Brunswick drivers were not impressed by 75-cent toll that was put in place on the Trans-Canada Highway near Salisbury in the early 90s either. Many tried to pay in pennies, $100 bills, and even checks in protest. Oh, yeah, okay. That's creative. Former Premier Bernard Lord fulfilled the campaign promise by closing the controversial toll in 2000. Smith McCrossan said her office will advocate to have the idea for the new tolls quashed. Poplar hopes the province will consider exemptions for students like him and others who find themselves crossing the border every day. A lot of us are going to stop going over there. It could probably even affect enrollment from out of province to that university, which would then make funding the university more expensive. Sometimes when you make these decisions, right, you gain some, let's say you get the money from the tolls, but then if you have less student registrations, you're basically taking from one hand and having it taken out of your hand in another way, right, somewhere else. Uh, that's why you have to budget for the whole budget, not just specific budget item lines. Right? Because sometimes you make a cut and it shows up somewhere else as additional costs in another line item. So yes, for students that are going there several days a week or every day, every week, uh, if not an elimination of the toll, maybe there should be like a monthly pass with a much lower fee for people who are students, if there should be anything at all, really. This does seem a little counterintuitive. Thank you so much, uh, Kit Saucy, for mentioning that, because I did forget about the bringing in of that toll. All right. Um, Kit Saucy goes, yeah, exactly. I remember when someone paid the town with pennies for a fine. It was epic. All right. Okay. So yeah, like I said, lots of weirdness going on. Uh, and listen, like I'm about to hit 1 hour, and that's already the weirdness before we got into the bills. So we might not be able to talk about all these bills today, but hey, we have a show tomorrow as well. There were lots of interviews yesterday as well with the relative ministers that I listened to very quickly yesterday to try and get a overall sense. Um, I will talk about I think I'll talk more about the articles today, and then I'll probably have clips tomorrow because I didn't take any timestamps. I just wanted to get the sort of general overview. There was nothing particularly controversial in any of these interviews, but there was uh, some abilities to explain a little more in depth. And hearing it from the relative ministers, Mandy Golmasti and Sean Fraser, affecting a few of these. So hopefully, I will have some of those clips tomorrow so you can hear from them. Um, a couple of other things I wanted to mention before I got into it because I did forget to mention this. Um, that clip I showed to you yesterday of Evan Solomon being asked specifically why it is that the AI for all strategy does not have a requirement for uh, social media platforms and AI organizations and stuff like that, sort of like OpenAI with ChatGPT, to report. I listened to another interview with him on The Current yesterday, and the more I am hearing from him, the less impressed I am. Now, Evan Solomon was a broadcaster, right? Former host of Power and Politics. So he has the gift of the gab and he can keep talking and talking and talking and talking. Evan Solomon is one of these politicians that I'm learning who talks fast and says a lot of things and throws in a lot of facts because he knows his file, but doesn't, unless it's a straightforward question, doesn't actually answer the question at all. And I'm getting the impression that he is too turned on by the tech to be particularly receptive to critique, which is very dangerous. Um, he's being asked the question in The Current about the why not make it explicit, and then says, well, let me explain to you, and then he goes in and talks about all the things that were done before, like we saw in that clip interview where he demanded certain things of OpenAI when this came to be, and that the reporting structure is going there, and that there's more funding for Watchdog and all that kind of stuff is good, but it doesn't answer the question. Why are you not making it mandatory? And the host of The Current came back to this a couple of times, but that doesn't answer the question. And then Evan Solomon then gets on going. Like I said, it's not 30-second answer, right? It's like 2, 3, 4 minutes running out the clock. The interviewer had almost no time and talking very fast and moving and starting a thought and talking about, so this is what we do. And we don't talk about why we want to support AI, and taking it to a whole bunch of other places, right? We keep on talking about all the harms, but we kind of need to talk about the good AI could. No, the question is not what is the potential good from AI. It's why are you not obligating these people to report? He doesn't have an answer. Or he does have an answer. And if he says it out loud, he knows that it's not going to be popular. So, hey, stop asking me about that. Let me tell you about all the good things that AI could bring. Uh, that's the type of politics I really don't like. I really don't like, particularly on a subject like this, where there is basement bottom level trust on the part of citizens and consumers in the people who operate and own these platforms. I think that Mr. Solomon is thinks that the tech is very, very, very sexy, and therefore doesn't have much time. I believe that he believes that it is his job to sell it and perhaps to increase our trust in this. You don't do that by not answering a direct question about why you're not obligating people to report potential criminal activity that could lead to death to the police. Premier Eby is right. The bill is amiss on that front. Um, you really do have to listen to it. If you listen to The Current, go listen to that. It's a fewer than a 20-minute interview. Um, because Like I said, it's how easily he's able to speak of the technology and what it can do and all the other measures that the government has put in place and the road traveled to get to here is very impressive. Lots of very important information detail, and these things are important, but it doesn't answer the question. And it just seems to me that if you do not have an answer for this question, you probably shouldn't be going out doing media trying to sell it. You should be working to come up with an answer to that question that actually makes sense, which was the case for Mandy Goldmasty when I listened to her interview and I was asking about the change in the legislation for First Nations drinking water, why it doesn't officially strongly affirm the right to First Nations drinking water the way that the bill that was introduced in the House during the time that Justin Trudeau was there did. And she does have an explanation. That, again, as someone who is not from the community, I cannot tell on the surface whether or not it is BS or whether or not it's a real thing. Mhm. But based on the way she's explaining it and based on my limited ability to comprehend, it does, I can see how she could see a need to do it this way. I cannot see a reason for which Evan Solomon would not require reporting and for which he does not have an answer. So my only deductive reasoning conclusion is that the answer is something that would be even less popular than the fact alone that the reporting is not required. And therefore, he just doesn't want to say it. And he's working really, 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 really hard not to say it. He talks a lot and he talks fast. I'm always extremely suspicious of politicians who talk a lot and talk fast. Hello, Danielle. Jeez. Um. So yeah, that's yeah, get saucy. That's very dangerous. We need a cautious tech person. I agree. See, this is some place that I would actually like when I tell you that sometimes there's places where we need liberals and there's places that we need conservatives. This is a place that I really would love to have a traditional conservative, not a corporate conservative, a traditional conservative. So, whoa, 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 whoa! You want to get our privacy information? You want to do that? Let's just back that truck up a little bit and let's explore that a little more. Let's put some limits on that. Not too much, not too fast, right? There's an area I would like an actual, true, genuine conservative. The ones I grew up with. The people that were saying, "Hey, hey, hey, same-sex marriage. Whoa, 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 whoa. Let's not go too fast on that. I mean, think of the children. Whoa, what are we going to do here?" Right now, of course, it's kind of a bad example because a lot of people saying that were then trying to equate to marrying each other to marrying pets and stuff like that, and that was the whole disgusting part. But that, hey, let's just take this one step at a time here. We need another study on this one. Remember the number of studies we needed on whether or not it was okay. I think it was in the United States, whether or not it was okay to get rid of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So they had like 35 different studies saying that it wasn't going to affect troop readiness and it wasn't going to affect morale and whatsoever. And so, well, wait a minute, there's another little thing. Let's get another study. This was the type of thing for which we need yet another study. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't do anything. There are certain small steps we can take along the way. But it just seems to me that on this type of technology, right, it's they're saying, for example, surveillance pricing. the NDP is out there claiming that surveillance pricing doesn't appear anywhere in the bill. I don't know if that's true. We've heard Minister Solomon talk a lot about specifically about surveillance pricing. Now, there's two different ways. There are many ways to go about doing that, but it seems that it is addressed somehow. Um, However, when we're talking about this, right, Mr. Solomon wants to have, rather than just an outright ban on surveillance pricing as proposed by the NDP, says, well, we have to leave some room of it because, we have some loyalty programs and stuff like that. And we don't want to affect that. And NDP says, listen, there shouldn't be some changes. There shouldn't be changes on pricing in this matter for anything, whether it's money, whether it's points, whether it's anything, right? Um, Evan Solomon, oh, we know we need to leave that. And so the NDP is saying, hey, that's just a silly loophole. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, we're talking about surveillance pricing, right? Why not ban it altogether and then see if there are areas of exception that we can loosen the regulation up for. But Evan Solomon wants to proceed. It's like, no, 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 no. We can't ban it entirely because there's this exception, leaving the loophole open. And if that loophole is abused of, then maybe we'll look at additional legislation. But the damage has been done. Right? Again, two different approaches, but it does seem to be that if we're talking about our electronics being surveyed and our past behavior being surveyed, and then we get something and the price of the thing changes automatically because whatever data they gain on us seems to indicate that we are willing to pay more. That seems to me to be a practice that we should be banning outright. And if there are exceptions, then we adjust afterwards and not the other way around. And when I mix both of them together, the not reporting and not the outright ban on surveillance pricing, again, makes me wonder whether or not Mr. Solomon's first priorities are on actually protecting consumers. Because I'm not getting that feeling. I'm not getting that feeling. Kid Hyper T here. I find it ironic that they're going to put age verification on social media before Pornhub. Perhaps. Yep. I'm still worried about how it is that they're going to do age verification at all. And if I'm sharing my identity cards, right, that type of information with a social media company, again, for which there is no trust. Where does that information go? How does it get stored? What's my recourse if that's leaked? How much money will be put in? How much effort will be put in to securing that? So the banning of social media for kids 16 and under or under 16, that's the easy part. The part where this is going to hit a big, big snag and may ultimately never come into being is on all that whole age verification. Who does it? How does the information get stored? What are the protections and what are our recourses? Because we've been doing so well at regulating these online social platforms so far, right? They've been particularly willing to be just so helpful on these types of matters, right? Mm. Man, oh man, oh man. So, looking, that's some of the things having to do with these bills. But let's take a look at some of these bills here, kids and cubs. Some of the news about them. The first one here, as the Justice Minister says that new bail and sentencing law is a major step forward. This is from Peter Zamanic of CBC News. The Liberal government's long promised reforms to Canada's bail and sentencing regime are now law. Bill C-14, the Bail and Sentencing Reform Act, received royal assent on Monday. The new law amends the Criminal Code, the Youth Criminal Justice Act, and the National Defence Act to tighten the bail and sentencing framework across all three. Quote, "We've taken a major step forward, but we also know there's more to do," Justice Minister Sean Fraser said. The minister said the bill was crafted in consultation with police forces and his counterparts in provinces and territories. He thanked them for their contributions, which he said would help restore confidence in the justice system. Fraser said the new law is central to the federal government's public safety strategy and was specifically crafted to keep the country and its people safer by addressing their concerns. The law, quote, "is designed to target some of the most frequent cases of concern we hear in our engagement with communities across Canada," Fraser said. Whether that's auto theft or home invasion, whether it's extortion, whether it's trafficking, or whether it is assault or sexual assault. In a post on social media, Prime Minister Mark Carney said the new legislation makes, quote, "more than 80 changes to the criminal code to tighten bail and sentencing laws." Carney said the charges will, quote, "keep violent and repeat offenders off your streets and keep you and your community safe," assuming that the provinces can implement the law. Because there is some difficulty. Well, first of all, we have lack of incarceration space, number one, and the courts are not properly staffed so that these cases can be heard quickly, and that whether or not there's a need for bail or incarceration while waiting for bail can even be determined. The changes to the Youth Criminal Justice Act, for example, give police the power to publicly identify a young person in cases where there is a threat to public safety. The legislation changes bail significantly by creating new, quote, "reverse onus provisions" that makes detention, not bail, the default. It means someone seeking bail must prove they should not remain behind bars while they await trial, instead of prosecutors having to prove denying bail is justified. That provision will automatically impact anyone charged with violent auto theft, extortion involving violence, breaking and entering a private home, some human trafficking offenses, some, why not all? Auto theft for a criminal organization, committing a third violent crime, choking, suffocating, or strangling someone. The legislation also puts a reverse bail onus on anyone charged with a violence offense involving a weapon who has been convicted of a similar offense within the last 10 years. It expands the circumstances under which bail can be withdrawn as well. Okay. I like that one. The legislation putting a reverse bail onus on anyone charged with a violent offense involving a weapon who's been convinced of a similar offense over the last 10 years. I like that the time frame is quite long rather than just one or two here. The Bail and Sentencing Reform Act gives courts the power to impose consecutive sentences for repeat offenders in cases involving violence, vehicle theft, breaking and entering, and offenses committed on behalf of organized crime. That's something that's probably going to get challenged at the Supreme Court because consecutive and concurrent sentencing cases frequently end up there. It restricts the circumstances under which a court can impose a conditional sentence, where certain sentences can be served in the community for someone convicted of sexual assault or other sex crimes involving a minor. Under the new legislation, courts will also be able to impose steeper penalties for contempt in both civilian and military courts, and the legislation gives both the military and civilian courts the power to hand out harsher penalties to people who repeatedly commit acts of violence, assault first responders and transit workers, commit acts of retail theft and other theft, and have been convicted of mischief to property offenses. The new law also gives courts the power to ban someone accused of extortion or any offense involving a firearm from being in possession of a firearm or other weapon. Fraser said the federal government is providing the provinces with funding so they can track the impact of the changes contained in the Bail and Sentencing Reform Act in order to inform government on how the law can be tweaked or improved in the future. Conservative MP Frank Caputo said the act does not go far enough, describing its measures as a, quote, "small step when Canada's bail system needs a wholesale reform." Yes, C-14 did something. It may have taken a small step. We don't want to take a small step. We want to solve the problem, he said Tuesday. Of course, he then suggested how it is that the problem could be solved. Tim Tierney, president of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, welcomed the change, saying it marks, quote, "a meaningful step towards safer streets and fewer repeat violent offenses." He said in a statement, "With effective implementation and sustained investment to address the root causes of crime, the act will help build safer, more resilient communities across the country." Now, of course, as I mentioned before, this bill will not do much if the provinces then don't do their part by funding the court system appropriately, so that bail and sentence and bail hearings can take place in a very timely manner, so it could be determined that those who do not need bail, well, they don't have to be in these incarcerated spaces for long times while they're waiting for that decision to be had before they've been convicted of any crime, right? And if that means having to build more capacity to house people, which I'm sure Doug Ford would love because that's another contract he can give to his developer buddies. Um, where Ontario is where the majority of the problem is, specifically in terms of not having space. Um, so the premiers now have the bill that they've been asking for, that they've been blaming the federal government, saying that we can't do this because of the federal government, when really a lot of the problem was theirs by not just being willing to put the money where it needed to ensure that the court system works well and that there is enough space to actually house the people that they want jailed, not bailed, while waiting for their trials. Well, now they need to do their share of the work and they need to find that money. Because Sean Fraser in that interview did make it very clear that they are not necessarily prepared to supply money for that. They've got money for other things, like, for example, again, as it's stated in the article, to be able to look at how this works on the ground when it is implemented and in effect, and then to make suggestions on how to improve it after seeing it in action for a while. But if Doug Ford needs to build a new jail, there are no federal dollars in it for him there. He's going to have to find the money. If Doug Ford wants the court system and the administration of justice, which is a provincial responsibility in these cases, to run more smoothly, he's going to have to find the money. So we'll see how that works. But let it be known now that any complaints that the federal government's fault that these people are getting out, that has been handled now, if that ever was legitimate in the first place. Now it's up to the provinces to ensure that the means for this bill to be enforceable and workable take place. And again, given the quality of our premiers, I don't have much confidence. Also, because the premiers, by not doing it, can then keep on trying to blame the federal government for the fact that, well, they're incapable of doing their jobs. Right? Um, Again, sometimes the people screaming loudest about these things don't actually want the solution. They want the problem to persist because there's something in the problem persisting that is very convenient and useful to them, like having someone to blame. I'm just saying. Kitsasi, an underfunded court system is why there are people out on bail constantly, a lack of social services and support systems for vulnerable populations. And not only why there are people out on bail consistently, but also why there are people in jail without having been convicted of a crime for periods that are way too long. It's both of them. Kitsasi going, we need a rehabilitation program, not a prison program. We probably need both, but yeah, we're very late. We're very, very, very light on the rehabilitation part. But that one has passed through. Now, the other one is the lawful access bill, and conservatives are really, really upset. Really, really upset that that the liberals again wanted to pass a bill that combats crime, the alleged law and order conservatives. But again, right? This has to do again with things online where the conservatives live in order to do whatever it is they do to misinform Canadians. And again, the conservatives also having problem with anti-hate legislation all the time, which they do a lot online where they live and fundraise, and so do their influencers. So yeah, you'll notice frequently with conservatives that if it has anything to do with regulating what happens online and regulating to fight hate, they oppose it every time. Just like they don't fight for Hockey Night in Canada or the CBC. because it doesn't serve them. If you do anything to help the CBC, that goes against their mission for there to be only one voice in media, and the voice that, obviously, that voice being one that advances their positions. If you restrict hate speech, given they love to engage in it so much, well, that makes it harder for them to press the outrage button so that they can get people to open up their wallets and give them their data. And then, if you have a lawful access bill where we can go into your devices and see what it is that you did, maybe when you were pushing hate, for example, for donation and clicks, well, that wouldn't serve them either now, would it? Again, the Conservatives are not there to help you or to protect you, the citizen. Seems like they want to defend their ability here to be able to keep on using online forums to spread hate, and don't want any accountability either for the hate that they spread or the ability for the police to investigate should they be using their online presences in order to do that. This is from Darren Major of the CBC. Conservative MPs are taking issue with how the Liberal government is trying to push its controversial lawful access legislation through the House of Commons before MPs break for the summer. Government House Leader Stephen McKinnon tabled a motion on Tuesday that, if passed, would cut down the time the House Public Safety Committee can consider Bill C-22, which would require some service providers to retain certain customer data so that police and spies can request it during investigations. The Liberals are attempting to ram Bill, quote, the Liberals are attempting to ram Bill C-22 in a speedy and undemocratic way, Frank Caputo, again, the Conservative public safety critic, told reporters on Parliament Hill. The motion would direct the committee to wrap up its clause-by-clause review of the bill, meant to be the final review before the committee refers the legislation back to the House, and prevent MPs from putting forward new amendments. The motion would also limit debate on the bill once the committee returns it to the House. Quote, they're using their manufactured majority. No, not manufactured majority. Majority gained through 3 by-elections in which the Conservatives had a terrible, terrible performance getting their vote out, I might add. They're using their majority in what might be the most aggressive programming motion I've ever seen, Caputo said. The Liberal reached majority status in the House earlier this year after winning a slate of by-elections, and several opposition MPs defected to join the governing party. Again, that MPs didn't like the leadership under your party enough and wanted to go somewhere else. Doesn't mean it's a manufactured majority. You should have just treated your people better. That's not the government's problem. The proposed legislation promises to help law enforcement and the Canadian Security Intelligence Service obtain more digital information more quickly, something the security community has been pushing for since the advent of the internet. Public Safety Minister Gary Anandan-Sangari has called for the bill to be passed before the House breaks for the summer at the end of the week. Conservatives want government to split the bill in two, giving additional time to study the more controversial second half, the Supporting Authorized Access to Information Act. Caputo said that his party is willing to pass the first section of Bill C-22, which would lower the legal threshold for law enforcement and intelligence bodies to access basic subscriber information and speed up investigations, quote, as swiftly as possible. He said the second part of the bill has, quote, been way too quickly brought to committee. We need to see more of it. When pressed on the legislation during Tuesday's question period, Anandang Sangri accused the Conservatives of trying to hold up the bill and argued that the government can't, quote, cherry pick which portions of the legislation to implement. The Supporting Authorized Access to Information Act would require electronic service providers to develop and maintain the technical capabilities to enable police and CSIS to obtain communications and information for their probes. It would also require, quote, core providers to retain metadata akin to call logs for a certain period of time. Both privacy advocates and tech giants have raised concerns about the second part of the bill. Two of the country's most prominent civil rights advocates, the Citizen Lab and the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, have argued that it could create a surveillance capability regime with minimal restrictions. US tech giants like Apple, Meta, Google argue the bill's technological demands would weaken or break encryption, a key safety measure used by activists, lawmakers, journalists, and everyday Canadians to safeguard communications and other important information. Yes, but it's also used by criminals. Right? It's also used by criminals. Conservative MP Jacob Mantle raised a point of order on Tuesday to argue that the motion went against parliamentary procedure. While such programming motions are typical, Mantle argued that the one relating to Bill C-22 is especially egregious because it sets a retroactive deadline for proposed amendments. The motion says that only amendments submitted to the committee on Monday can be considered, even though the committee's MPs are meeting Tuesday to discuss the bill. It cannot be in order that a bill provides a deadline retroactively and known only to the government members, unbeknownst to any other member of this House until that deadline was passed, Mantle said in the House. Liberal MP Mark Gerritsen responded to argue that the House has the powers to limit and, in some cases, waive its privileges. The Speaker didn't immediately rule on Mantle's concerns. The Liberals previously split their first attempt at passing lawful access, then known as Bill C-2, in half after it faced criticism from being too intrusive. The other half of that bill focused on border security and immigration. It became law earlier this year. So the Conservatives, when the bill was first presented as Bill C-2, said, hey, there's too much here. You need to split the bill. And we're prepared to support this part, but not this part. So they did that. And the portions that focused on border security and immigration became law earlier this year. Now that they're ready to go ahead with this one, this bill that would allow some lawful access to what's in their little electronics, now all of a sudden, oh, well, we need to split the bill again, now that it's called Bill C-22, and delay that. Now, there's been no lack of delay tactics being used in committee by the Conservatives here when it comes to this bill. I believe I saw it on iPolitics. It was earlier today that let's see, we're here. This is the bail laws. Just going to go here. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing. There we go. Government House Leader Stephen McKinnon has also submitted the required paperwork to bring forward a motion that would publicly impose a similarly tight turnaround time for members of the Public Safety and National Security Committee to wrap up final stage of their ongoing review of Public Safety Minister Gary Anandang-Sangri's proposal to update and expand the current lawful access regime. As per the terms of the motion, which is in the queue to begin debate later this afternoon, within 1 hour of its adoption, committee members would reconvene to resume clause-by-clause consideration of the bill with a 30-minute cutoff to deal with all remaining questions before reporting it back to the House of Commons for a final round of debate, during which each party, including the New Democrats and the Greens, would be allocated up to 20 minutes to put their final thoughts and concerns on the parliamentary record before the bill would go to a final vote. They are really... Now, when Frank Caputo says they are ramming this through, they are ramming this through. But, again, this is a bill that has been being debated and debated and debated and has been split already, and the Conservatives want it split again. So it's not like this has not been discussed. It's not like this was just introduced and discussed for 2 weeks and now they're ramming it through. This has been being discussed for months and months. During a back and forth with reporters yesterday, Anand Sangri suggested that Conservatives committee members have been using staging tactics to delay its passage. According to the Toronto Star here, which may have some of the elements as to how it is that they have been doing this. Nope, it does not. Okay, don't know why it referred to an article that actually says less than what they've said themselves. Quote, Anand Angri told reporters the committee had devoted 10 hours to clause-by-clause consideration of the bill while addressing just 7 amendments, amounting to a filibuster, the Wire service notes. Conservative MP Frank Caputo, a member of the committee, said his party is not filibustering but merely ensuring the bill receives proper scrutiny, and said it was his job as part of His Majesty's loyal opposition to ensure that legislation is constitutionally compliant. I'm sorry. I'm laughing at the concept of Conservatives suddenly being concerned that their bills are constitutionally compliant. This is the party that botched up appointing a Supreme Court justice. because they couldn't understand the Constitution. This is a party that fleeced Canadians out of millions of dollars on the promise of a Triple E Senate, which was completely and totally unconstitutional. This is from the party under Harper that was probably going to go down in history as the most overturned by the courts because they kept on doing unconstitutional stuff. But yes, now the Conservatives, when it comes to this, uh, they want to ensure that the legislation is constitutionally compliant. Yeah, that's the reason they're doing it. Okay, sure. Uh, Barring a sudden burst of cross-aisle cooperation, the Liberals will likely serve notice of their intention to invoke closure force or vote on the motion shortly after the opening round of debate gets underway later today, although they would have to wait until tomorrow morning to start the process. Uh, Also on the radar, Elizabeth May will team up with former Green MP Mike Morris, who now serves as deputy party leader, and Senator Rosa Galvez to mark the now imminent end of the sitting by highlighting what the advisory describes as, quote, major concerns with key legislation and government strategy. Um, so yeah, um, Conservatives dragging their feet on this one. They gave them, I believe that originally they were going to give 5 hours, if I remember what I was reading correctly, and they gave 10 for clause by clause. And the Conservatives only managed to get 7 amendments discussed in 10 hours. Come on. No, they weren't being helpful here. Jeez. Ah, my word. Let's see what else we had here. And then we had the tabling of the First Nations clean drinking water legislation. This is Alessia Passafume from the Canadian Press, who we've been her work we've been reading a lot lately. I think that probably the Indigenous file is her beat specifically. But it says here, new legislation tabled by the government on Tuesday will create a legislative framework to protect drinking water in First Nations communities, Indigenous Services Minister Mandy Golmasti said. But one chief who helped draft a previous version of the legislation warns that the bill's vague language on First Nations' rights to clean drinking water will only leave communities worse off. Golmasti told reporters on Parliament Hill that Bill C-37, tabled in the House of Commons on Tuesday, will advance the critical work of addressing long-term drinking water advisories and recognizes First Nations jurisdiction over water on their lands. She said the new bill is backed by $4.6 billion in funding over 5 years, describing the sum as the single largest commitment ever made to First Nations water protection. This isn't the first time the federal Liberals have put forward clean water legislation, but it is the first attempt by Prime Minister Mark Carney's government to tackle the issue. C-37 states that the federal government will, quote, further the progressive realization for individuals on First Nations lands of the human right to safe drinking water as protected by the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. The previous bill introduced by the Trudeau Liberals, C-61, affirmed the human right of every individual on a First Nation land to have access to clean and safe drinking water in accordance with this act. Anishinaabe Nation Grand Council Chief Linda Debasigi, who helped draft the previous version of the bill, said First Nations communities have had enough of, quote, progressive realization and simply want the federal government to recognize they have a right to clean water. Quote, I'm absolutely concerned with that language in that bill, she said Tuesday, adding that First Nations already have a human right to clean water. Lawyer Michael Rosenberg, whose successful efforts to sue the federal government on behalf of some 260 First Nations led to the new water bill, told the Canadian Press the changes to the bill's wording on human rights amount to, quote, legal gymnastics. Quote, the federal government has turned a clear recognition of a right to safe drinking water on reserve into an aspirational policy that carries little accountability, Rosenberg said. This change appears to be a direct response to the fact that the federal government is still in court fighting First Nations to deny the right to safe drinking water on reserve. Anishinaabe Aski Nation Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler said the legislation offers, quote, a strong starting point for addressing the problem. The nations he represents currently have 16 long-term and 8 short-term drinking water advisories. Quote, I've heard many governments over my years promise to make the necessary investments, but we remain in the same position. The legislation introduced today is not perfect, but it addresses the most immediate needs of our communities, Fiddler said in a media statement. It sets minimum standards for drinking water and affirms the inherent right of First Nations to hold jurisdiction in relation to water and wastewater. Fiddler said he still worries the legislation may not adequately address the true costs of ending the water crisis on reserve. NDP Indigenous Affairs critic Leah Gazan attacked the wording of the bill, calling it weaker than previous attempts by the Liberals to ensure clean and safe drinking water on reserves. Quote, in 2015, when the Liberal government was elected, they promised to end all water boil advisories. It's now 2026, and in addition to not fulfilling that promise, they have now confirmed that they do not even recognize clean drinking water as a human right for First Nations, Kazan said in a media statement. There's some creative liberty, interpretive liberties taken in that statement there. But the overall sentiment, I can understand. Gull Massey said the new bill was written, quote, to stand the test of time. The now defunct C-61, introduced in 2023 by the government of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, died when Parliament was prorogued last year. Patty Hajdu, Trudeau's Indigenous Service Minister, introduced the 2023 bill in response to the lawsuit against the government that was settled in 2021. The text of that bill went beyond the terms of the settlement and included an option for source water protection and recognition that First Nations have a human right to clean drinking water. C-61 was opposed by the provinces of Alberta and Ontario, which warned that it would undermine resource development. The Trudeau-era bill was drafted with input from First Nations and nearly became law after weeks of study and debate before it died on the order paper. In January 2025, months before the last federal election, Hajdu said she had hoped whoever is in government next time picks this up, and called C-61, quote, incredibly thoughtful legislation that was co-drafted with First Nations people. Gull Massey promised last summer that the new bill would affirm First Nations' human right to clean drinking water. She initially promised to introduce the legislation in the fall, but failed to do so. Some First Nations leaders, including Dabasigi, said they were not consulted on the new legislation. The House of Commons is expected to rise by the end of the week for summer break, which means the legislation likely won't be debated or voted on until the fall. And there is a little bit of coverage from CBC here that may have a little bit of a quote from the minister. So let's bring that to you here.
This legislation is essentially trying to right a fundamental inequality here in Canada, which is that for First Nations communities like those on reserve, there are no sort of legally binding minimum standards when it comes to drinking water that Canadians within provinces, municipalities would be entitled to. And so, we have seen the federal Liberals move to lift more than 150 boil water advisories on First Nations across the country, but there are still dozens in place. Some have been in place for decades in cases where communities need to actually be evacuated, like, for example, Saskatchewan First Nation in Northern Ontario, because of water issues. So this legislation is much awaited, and First Nations groups have been calling for this type of legislation, but they are worried that this is not going far enough because it does not enshrine the right to safe drinking water as a right the way that the previous legislation did. It also does not protect source water. So, of course, water sources that are not necessarily on Indigenous land but could flow their way. We know that this has been a historic issue. If you think of Grassy Narrows First Nation in Northern Ontario, a nearby pulp and paper mill dumped untreated mercury in the 60s and 70s, and the majority of community members there still exhibit signs of mercury poisoning. So lots of questions about what this legislation will actually mean for these communities that have been waiting for a very long time. The Minister for Indigenous Services announcing the legislation said different First Nations are at different stages here. The end goal is to have communities administering their own water laws, a new First Nation-led water commission, and she was pressed on the legislation, why there were changes compared to previous versions. She said she needed it to be written to stand the test of time.
I think that for me, really trying to get this process right, listen to the people that I'm working with, listen to the people that I'm working for, getting their feedback. Their feedback was, get this bill to pass. Get this bill in a place where it's not challenged. Get this bill in a place where we can be involved in the process. And many leaders have also asked me to get this bill in a place where we can work with provincial governments, with territorial governments, so that we can have a conversation amongst ourselves.
So there you go, kids and cubs. That is a little bit from the minister, and hopefully tomorrow's show, and when I go through the full interview, I'll be able to bring some more specific quotes that would be absolutely vital to the conversation here. The final bit that I have for you was something that came out of left field and that I found very, very surprising. It was a proposal by a Conservative MP, which was very surprising. MP Corey Tochor, I'm going to guess, Tochor, Hadn't heard of him before. He is the Member of Parliament for Saskatoon University since the 2019 federal election. And he gave a very, very thoughtful interview on power and politics that I'm hoping that I'll be able to present a segment of for you tomorrow as well when I'm looking to add on what the information that I'm giving you today. But according to John Paul Tasker from CBC, Conservative MP Cory Tocher introduced a new legislation on Tuesday to legalize prescribing psychedelics like psilocybin, colloquially known as magic mushrooms, which researchers and patients say can effectively treat some mental health disorders. Under Canada's federal drug laws, psilocybin is a controlled substance and possession, production, and distribution are illegal without authorization. These psychedelics were criminalized during the so-called war on drugs, and many Western countries like Canada cracked down on substances seen as dangerous, addictive, and a source of crime. Defenders argue this classification doesn't fit the scientific and anecdotal data suggesting psilocybin can ease major depression and help with substance abuse like alcoholism. When we're talking about psilocybin being able to ease depression, this also has some scientific background here. I'm going to include this for you in the chat, but there's some data and research done by Johns Hopkins University in the United States that goes and to support that. But it says here, our findings add to evidence that under carefully controlled conditions, this is a promising therapeutic approach that can lead to significant and durable improvements in depression, says Natalie Guksayan, medical doctor, assistant professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. She cautions, however, that, quote, the results we see are in a research setting and require quite a lot of preparation and structured support from trained clinicians and therapists, and people should not attempt to try it on their own. Over the last 20 years, there's been a growing, there's a word missing here, field of research or growing body of research with classic psychedelics, the pharmacological class of compounds that include psilocybin, an ingredient found in so-called magic mushrooms. According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, psilocybin can produce perceptual changes, altering a person's awareness of their surroundings and of their thoughts and feelings. Treatment with psilocybin has shown promise in research settings for treating a range of mental health disorders and addictions. So with that in mind, Health Canada allows a limited number of patients to access psilocybin through its application-based special access program, but advocates say the process is cumbersome, involving a tangle of red tape that can sometimes take over a year to navigate. Plus, Health Canada started rejecting more psilocybin applications than in the past. Approval rates dropped to about 30% in recent months, according to data gathered by Conservatives. A spokesperson for the department said it has issued just 354 authorizations for psilocybin since January 2022. As an experimental drug, its safety and efficacy have not been established, the spokesperson said in a statement. Tocher's private members bill would clear away those hurdles by allowing physicians to prescribe psilocybin and psilocin without needing approval from federal bureaucrats. It would also direct Health Canada to give psilocybin priority review status, which would allow it to be better studied after what some advocates say has been half a century long, quote, psychedelic research winter. In an interview with CBC News, Tocher says Canada is grappling with, quote, with a mental health epidemic, and that it is unconscionable for patients to jump through so many hoops to alleviate that anguish. The Saskatoon MP said he was inspired to act after one of his constituents, Thomas Hartle, approached him when Health Canada revoked his access to psilocybin, which Hartle had been using to treat the severe anxiety he experienced during oncology treatments. Tocher said Hartle ended up traveling to the Caribbean 3 times a year to access the psilocybin he couldn't legally get at home before passing away in 2024 at age 56. While Hartle had access to medical assistance and dying, the federal government cut him off from a drug that was making his life more tolerable while he fought to survive. Quote, the state will help you end your life, but won't grant you legal access to a plant that is non-toxic and non-addictive. It makes no sense what we're doing in Canada, Tocher said. There's been an explosion of research that shows it can be effective treatment for mental health and addiction patients. There's a body of science out there that's showing this is safe, and there's no reason why we manage it the way we do. Tocher noted the gray market exists in Canada with storefronts illegally selling psilocybin outside the special access program. These stores have been the subject of police raids and in Ottawa's case, a series of suspicious arson attacks. He says patients in need shouldn't be forced to turn to such places and risk criminal penalties to get psilocybin. Psychedelics can produce serious side effects. There can be bad trips where a person experiences hallucinations, paranoia, extreme fear, confusion, or panic attacks. There are also neurological and cardiovascular conditions that can result from drug use. Impairment from psychedelics can also lead to dangerous behavior and psychosis. That's why torture said the drug is best administered in a clinical setting under a doctor's care, something that's difficult now given it's a controlled substance akin to drugs like heroin and cocaine. What's also difficult is getting a bill like this through Parliament. Private members' bills usually fail, especially without the support of the government of the day. We're hopeful, he said, regarding possible Liberal support. Conservatives have rallied against illicit drug use in the past, particularly the Liberal move to create safe supply to address the opioid overdose crisis. Torture seems psilocybin in a different light. This is right up the Conservatives' alley. This is about freedom of choice, he said. Jas Venat, a Canadian Armed Forces veteran who served in Afghanistan, was diagnosed with PTSD after witnessing the horrors of war while deployed as part of Operation Medusa in 2006. In an interview with CBC News, Venat said he carried on and served in the Canadian Armed Forces for another 10 years after that tour, but inside I was unraveling. I found it much harder to sustain a professional life. It was just getting messy, and I felt so empty inside, he said. And here we have him uh, talking about it, uh, about his own personal experience, which I will show here. Whoops, this is the one here.
I'm here today to speak about my own experiences, but my story is not unique. So I'm also here to represent a much larger community of Canadians who have seen the positive potential of psychedelic-assisted therapy. I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder in 2006 following my first combat tour to Afghanistan. Like many others, I adhered to the orders I was given. I took the medication, I went to the therapy, but nothing seemed to be effective and I was actually getting much worse. I continued to push through another decade of military service like that, but eventually in 2016, I unfortunately had to release from the Canadian Armed Forces. That led to almost 5 more years of me trying to manage my post-traumatic stress. After extensive research and conversations with clinicians, I decided to engage in psilocybin-assisted therapy. For the first time in nearly 15 years, I felt peace. I was able to finally integrate and solidify everything I had learned through the years of psychotherapy. It didn't erase my trauma, it changed my relationship with it. But the real value is not in the medicine alone. The preparation therapy beforehand and the support during and after treatment are equally important. Working with trained professionals helps individuals process underlying trauma, negative experiences, beliefs, or emotions, and not simply to feel different for a day, but to make lifelong, lasting changes.
So there you go, kids and cubs. A little bit of extra news on that there. So testimonial for somebody for whom it has helped. The way that it was described to me is such that when you have PTSD and certain issues like that, is your brain goes down the same path all the time, like a well-worn ski trail. And what this type of therapy does when you have the dose and you're in an assisted situation and being guided through with a licensed therapist is that your thought process is brought to another way and to create a new trail, a new ski trail to go down, and it's apparently very effective and relatively quickly that you can that basically your brain sort of rewires that when you get faced with this situation or those particular triggers to not go down the old ski trail that you always go down that always leads to the same results, but down this new path which is a little healthier and that where you're able to handle the situation better. I've also heard similar studies with MDMA, for example, often known as ecstasy or whatnot, particularly for people who are really blocked and don't and can't get the words out. Its uninhibiting effects help people get through, get what it is that they need to say, or what it is that they've been holding on to out. Makes it more likely to people more likely to share and to go in depth into what they're talking about, and therefore they can work through the feelings. So and the emotions and past trauma and stuff that they may be holding on to. So again, it's a very exciting field of research that has a lot of a lot of possibilities to help people and bring people a lot of benefit that could maybe even get people off, very expensive and other types of chemicals. So there's a lot to explore here, but like back in the days when we were looking at medical marijuana, the axis was super tight. Back in the days when they were looking at medical marijuana, you had to get a doctor to fill out a form, and then you had to send it in to get special exemption. It went to Health Canada, and you had to promise to have, things at home where you could like lock it up so that people couldn't get it, and you had to write down what provisions that you had to ensure that kids couldn't get into it or that it couldn't be stolen from you. And then you had to confirm that you didn't live within a certain distance of a school or a nursery and all that kind of stuff. It was very, very heavily regulated. So this seems to be the same thing here with this, which of course it should be at this time. But if there is this body of evidence, and then there should be no reason for which physicians, psychologists, therapists who are trained in this, who have the training, should not be able to order it to administer to their patients in the context of a clinical setting. And that is going to be guided, not to give it to them to take home and go out and self-medicate with, but to guide the specific therapy. There should definitely we should definitely be considering this and making this a little easier. And this is not something um, that is all that far off. In fact, where we live here at the Beaver Lodge, there's an actual research institute in terms of in the field of psychedelic medicine that has been established. I'm reading here, the KHSC, Kingston Health Sciences Center Research Institute, leads the first ever Health Canada approved clinical trial of at-home microdose psilocybin to treat anxiety. So we have this, like this, we're doing, right, a clinical trial right now on this in Canada, for those who don't know. So this legislation is not just popping up out of the blue. This is data that's been accumulated, so much so that a case has been made for clinical trial. This was October 9th, 2025, and I think we brought this to you back then, some news about this. But it says here, for the first time ever, researchers are studying the home use of non-hallucinogenic microdose levels of psilocybin, the active compound found in psychedelic mushrooms, to treat generalized anxiety disorder. The study, led by researchers at the Kingston Health Science Centre Research Institute, is the first ever Health Canada approved Phase 2A clinical trial examining the effects of daily at-home use of microdose psilocybin. The goal is to test if it can safely and effectively reduce the symptoms of anxiety without triggering the psychedelic effects typically associated with psilocybin. So this is even further than just in clinical setting. It's been proven enough in clinical setting that this particular one is microdosing is at home. So not even within the context of a therapeutic setting. There are significant unmet needs among people living with generalized anxiety disorder, and they are seeking effective, well-tolerated treatments, said Dr. Claudio Suarez, the study's principal investigator at KHSCRI, attending physician in KHSC's mental health and addiction program. The trial will enroll up to 60 participants and involves a 4-week treatment period followed by either an extension of the treatment for another 4 weeks or a placebo, depending on random assignment. Participants will take the medication at home and are not aware of which group they were assigned. The study represents a major shift, a new way of targeting anxiety by engaging the brain in novel ways, but without the sedation or emotional numbing caused by many of the current medications used to treat anxiety, said Dr. Suarez, who is also a professor of psychiatry at Queen's University and director of the Center for Psychedelic Health and Research at Providence Care. Generalized anxiety disorder affects roughly 5% of Canadian adults, or over 1.6 million people, and disproportionately impacts women. Despite its prevalence, current treatment options can be slow to work and come with side effects that make long-term use difficult to tolerate for some individuals. Researchers are currently seeking adults, and this was at the time, living with generalized anxiety disorder to join the study to learn more or inquire about participation. So that was at the time, though, they were looking for recruitment here. But then it goes on to say, promising new therapies such as this need to be evaluated in trusted institutions that place patient safety, rigorous science, and ethical oversight at the center of everything we do, says Dr. David Pecora, President and CEO of KHCS. By leading this study, KHCS and the KHCSRI are ensuring that the search for innovative treatments happens in a safe, transparent, and responsible way. The study is supported by a grant from the Southeastern Ontario Academic Medical Organization and funding from Diamond Therapeutics. Generalized anxiety disorder is one of the most common and disabling mental health conditions, says Dr. Michael McDonnell, Chief Medical Officer at Diamond Therapeutics. If successful, this trial could open the door to new, more accessible treatment options for people who urgently need them. Early research has shown that very low doses of psilocybin may improve motivation and attention without triggering a psychedelic response, suggesting that hallucinogenic effects may not be necessary to achieve mental health benefits from psilocybin for patients with generalized anxiety disorder. As one of the largest mental health research trials currently underway at KHSC, the study represents an important step in advancing evidence-based innovation in psychiatric care and speaks to the role of KHSCRI plays in driving mental health research in Canada. Hmm. So there you go. Oh, I'm wondering if I might be able to get an interview with this person here, especially since we're in the same city. That could definitely be an interesting avenue for the show. I'll have to look into that. So there you go, kits and cups. That's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring. Word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really appreciate it when you do, especially when you share a little bit of yourself as to why it is our show resonates with you, because that is advertising we cannot buy, and it makes the people with whom you share our content more likely to click on it because they trust you, because you're a person of influence in your own circle. So please, please do, if you can, share the content. It helps us a lot. Other ways that you can help Kits and Cubs is by scanning this QR code. If you happen to not be watching on YouTube right now, that will bring you there. And if you are on YouTube, please, especially if you're live, click on our buttons, like, share, and subscribe. Give them a little smash. Yes, it's Pride Month. Why not smash? Smash with pride. There you go. Because it helps us with the algorithm. And if you are not watching live, but you're watching on your phone or tablet, and we were watching within 7 days of the broadcast, please swipe left on the comment section to grant us some hype points. And that helps smaller audience shows like ours try to find a bigger audience. And we appreciate your help on that front. We would also appreciate your financial support if you believe that what we do has some value and resonates with you. And of course, you are able, and you can do so by scanning this QR code, which will bring you to our coffee page where you can find the Beaver Lodge's Emergency Hydration Fund, where a couple of dollars can go a long way to helping this show remain financially stable. You can buy your favorite beaver a cup of hot chocolate, or your favorite grizzly a cup of hot coffee, dark like his soul, so he claims. We know that's not true, but so he claims. To give us an add a beaver or add a grizzly, little pat on the back sometimes does us a lot of good. And if you give us a little more, and then of course all of that goes back into the show to help make it. Well, just to help make it. So it goes back into the show to make a better product, of course, for everyone. So please, if you can, we would very much appreciate your support. We get about 95 to 97% of your donation when you donate through this platform. Of course, we have super chat stickers, and we have memberships on our YouTube page, which obviously can also we get about 70% of your donation there, and that helps us a lot. And of course, if you're doing the Buy Canada thing and just want to support us directly without funding any of the tech bros, a direct contribution via our email address from your bank to ours, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, will do the trick. And in those cases, we get 100% of your donation. So we thank you for all of your kindness and support. We appreciate any enthusiastic expression of encouragement for us to keep on going. All right. If you're not able to support us financially, please still use that same email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, to let us know what you think about the show, good, bad, or ugly. We really appreciate that. We appreciate compliments and constructive critique. If you have any suggestions for guests for the True North Eager Beaver interview project, we would love that. We are hearing more and more from the office of MPP Tyler Watt in Ontario, who we featured on our show a little bit when he was um, getting under Doug Ford's skin. So if you have any questions for him, please send them to us at True North Eager Beaver at gmail.com, or if you look on our YouTube page under posts, I posted something a while ago about us trying to get Tyler Watt and Olga Nestorova from the Honest News Network back on the show, and looking for your questions if you had any for them, so you can leave them there as well. But please let us know if you have anything on your mind that you would like us to ask him, because it seems that this is we're getting closer to actually being able to establish a date for that. Let's see. What else do we have for you, kids and cubs? Also, yes, if you want to reach us on our socials, at True Eager at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge, also on the Twitter, True North Eager Beaver on Facebook, our original home. We have the Damn Fam Discord if you want to keep the conversation going. We're on Instagram, thanks to Kit Uncover. We're on Substack under the name Beaver Bites if you're looking for us, and of course our coffee page, as we mentioned. So you can find us in many places if you want to keep the conversation going or keep up with what it is that we are doing. And we thank you so very much for that. Because democracy is something that you do, we have our 3 petitions for you. Ourcommons.ca petition E7340, which is a petition that calls upon the House of Commons and Parliament to invoke its authority under Section 53 of the Supreme Court Act, if I am not mistaken. Yes, to refer the constitutionality of the 2025 Alberta's Justice Statutes Amendment to the court to see if it is constitutional, of course, and to direct the Foreign Influence Transparency Commissioner to immediately investigate the meetings between the Alberta Prosperity Project and the Trump administration. And that petition is now at 39,591 signatures, and it closes on June 20th. So we only have about 3 more days to get the signatures there. It closes at June 20th at 9:13 p.m. Eastern, 9:13 a.m. Eastern time. Connected to this one, we have House of Commons, ourcommons.ca, petition E7124, which also deals with the separation issue, in the sense that there might be some foreign interference coming from the ambassador of the United States to Canada. And this petition calls upon the House to formally review the conduct of U.S. Ambassador Doucheface. Should the review find that the ambassador's actions are inconsistent with diplomatic protocol or detrimental to Canada's interests, they are. The government of Canada would take appropriate diplomatic measures, including the possible request for his recall. Although Mr. Hoekstra lately seems to have been changing his tune a little bit after IQ 47 said that one more time that Canada doesn't have anything that he needs. He seemed to contradict his boss in a statement afterwards, claiming that indeed we probably do have things that the United States needs, and that it's up to us to make them an offer. Which, of course, is really silly, because not only have we already been making offers, and that's gotten us nowhere, but if we have something you need, shouldn't you be making us an offer for how much you're willing to pay to get it? Just like we do if you have something we need. It seems that the onus is not the right way there on that one, sir. Again, so making baby steps, okay, but you still have it wrong, sir. You still have it wrong. And then, of course, we have House of Commons petition, ourcommons.ca, E7395, which is calling upon the House to basically no longer fund Stornoway. So there you go. And that petition is at 11. Nope, actually, I didn't update it. Is at 12,009 signatures. And that one again closes July 30th. The one to look into Ambassador Hoekstra closes on June 25th. So about a week, a little more than a week to go on that one. All right. Words of wisdom, kids and cubs. Again, my God, the value of sleep. It's incredible how good I feel. After 2 nights. Last night wasn't as fulsome sleep as the night before, but still way more than I've been getting. I'm I may actually try it again a third night because I'm liking the fact that I'm feeling a little more restored and refreshed. And I'm given that the last bout of insomnia was 8 days long. I might need more than one or two to fully recuperate. So who knows? Who knows? But I am enjoying sleep very much so, I have to say. So yeah, get proper rest if you can. Those are my words of wisdom. I don't have much for you. I'm just really thrilled that I am getting some right now. So I just want to share the good news. All right, kids and cubs, it can be a tough world out there. So please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And at the count of three, may I please have you say, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock on 1, 2, and 3. Oh, yeah, that's the good stuff right there. And since you asked so nicely, here's a little cock-a-doodle-doo just for you. Yeah, and even you too back there. Yeah, I see you. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and The Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, kids and cubs. Hopefully you're back. I see that you're chatting about it chatting about it in the chat. I hate it when I use the word, the noun, as the verb as well. That you're talking about it in the chat here. So why not mention it right now? Going on is the Canadian. Well, the Canadian women's softball team is trying to qualify for the Olympics here, and it starts with the Women's Softball World Cup. Softball, Canada had qualified for every Olympic softball tournament to date, winning its first and only medal, a bronze, in 2021 in Tokyo by defeating Mexico for it. It was not in the games in 2024, and it was excluded in 2012 and 2016, but it will return in 2028 in Los Angeles. And it seems here that the World Softball World Cup, the top two teams from each of the three groups, which are actually their own separate little tournaments, plus two wildcards, will advance to the eight-team finals next April in Australia. And the winner of the finals will get a spot in the Olympics, where they'll join the host United States and four other teams to be determined in a subsequent qualifier, including one for the Americas region next year. Group A play began yesterday, and Canada opened with a very close 11-10 victory over Italy in extra innings. And Canada is currently playing Australia now. And based on the comments that Kit Linda is putting in there, Australia is having a really, really rough time. It seems that the first inning alone lasted 41 minutes. Wow. I am going to guess that I don't see what the score is, but I'm going to guess that Canada did really well, because I believe I saw Kit Linda say that for Australia, their turn at bat was relatively quick. Let's put it that way. So yeah, Team Canada doing its best there to try to earn its way into the next level to get there. And if you want to watch that, that will be on the CBC Sports website if you're looking at that. For those of you who are wondering about the World Cup, tomorrow will be the match between Canada and Qatar. And it seems that Alphonso Davies is still not certain as to whether or not he will be able to play. Says that he hasn't played for the national team since tearing his ACL in March 2025, but he jogged with his teammates at the start of Monday's practice, but remained in the injury protocol. Yesterday, he was once again with the team for the first 15 minutes of its workout, but the rest of the session was closed to the media, and the team declined to give an update. On the good news side, every other player on the Canadian squad was a full participant in practice, which includes key central defender Moise Bombito, who missed the opener as he continues to recover from the broken leg he suffered in October. Some bad news for Victoria Umboko. Not only did her run as Serena Williams' double partner come to a quick end after they had won their first match, defeating the number 3 team in the tournament. But then Mboko had, I think it was a slip and a fall on the grass court surface at that tournament and injured her knee. And it seems that she will not be well enough to participate in Wimbledon. So she's going to have to miss it. However, Serena and Venus Williams will be teaming up in the doubles tournament at Wimbledon, playing together for the first time in quite a while. And they've won a combined 12 singles championships and teamed up for 6 doubles titles in the past at Wimbledon. So they will definitely have, people will be wondering how well they'll be doing. No reason to suspect that they wouldn't. And if I was a doubles player, I would be hoping to and praying to everything that is remotely holy, and maybe a few things that aren't, that I would not end up in their section of the draw. All right. That's all I've got for you today. And hopefully tomorrow there won't be too much new news, and that tomorrow I'll be able to go into the interviews with the various people who are proposing the various bills that we talked about today, and bring some additional insights from that, and maybe have an update from what's been going on at the G7. And then who else? Who knows what else the news day will throw our way. But until then, amour et bisous. Mhm. And we will see you tomorrow. Bye bye. And it seems that I clicked the end stream button and it did not end. So I didn't stick the dismount. So let's try.